Hello friends, this is Sarah. Welcome to another Flourishing Fibers embroidery project. Today we are stitching up Windowsill Blooms. Before I get started, I want to share that you can find the awl I use to punch all the holes and many other creative projects, patterns, and notions on my website, flourishingfibers.com. All the links will be in the description. If you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe. Your support is greatly appreciated. Now let's get started. For this project, I highly recommend using a heavy cardstock, something over 90 pounds. Here I'm using 110. Print your pattern directly onto your cardstock and cut it to shape. You will need 2 size points for this pattern. The ultra fine is for stitches that I use 1 through 4 strands of thread. The fine point is for strand counts over 4. Use a piece of styrofoam as a cushion. I've mentioned in other videos why I recommend styrofoam, but the short version is that it's easier on your hands and your awl. Always avoid using wood, multi-layered cardboard, foam board, or any hard surface as your cushion. Take your time and don't let the number of dots intimidate you. It only took a few minutes to pierce the pattern completely. One quick note before we get started. I want to talk about thread count for some of the sections. The inside of the window is stitching 2 strands, but use a single strand and double it up to equal 2. Frames 2 and 3 of the window are stitched with 6 strands, but I use 3 strands and double it up. Please review your stitching guide for thread count for each section. Okay, let's get started. We're starting off by stitching the basket of plant 1. This stitch is the corded single Brussels stitch, and it's a needle lace technique, but it's really just a buttonhole stitch. It looks intimidating, but trust me, it's so easy and fun. Once you get the first line down, it goes pretty quickly and the rhythm is really meditative. It's become my favorite new stitch, not only for the ease of it, but the density and the weaving style it creates. I'm a fan. Here I am working on the printed pattern paper, but I'm going to switch over to another view. There'll be less motion and you'll get a better view of the needle. We start off by doing the top line with backstitch. We will always start our stitches from the left side. We start our first line of buttonholes by coming up the second hole on the left, and from the top, go below your first backstitch and above the working thread. Continue with this pattern until you get to the end of the line. Once at the end, go down the second hole on the right. Okay, this next part is where we add the corded part of the stitch. We will need to stitch a straight stitch to go across the design. For fabric, we would just secure our thread to other back stitches, but that wouldn't give us enough tension and support for this project. So what we need to do is essentially a double single back stitch. Come up on hole 3 on the left and back down on 3 on the opposite side. Then return to come up the hole 3 on the left. Now we can start the following line of buttonholes. But this time we take our needle below the loop and the cord and over the working thread. I know that sounds complicated, but take the time to look at the video carefully. You will continue in this pattern until you get to the last hole on the sides. Then you stitch the base and backstitch again and use that as your cord. When all done, go around the sides of the basket with stem stitch, and there you go. It was harder for me to explain that to you than actually doing it. Let me know in the comments if you tried needle lacing before. I'm really curious to hear how many are new to it. Okay, moving on. We need to stitch the arches of the window now. We need to get this part done first because the leaves of the plant will overlap some of the arches. I also want to point out that since I'm using satin thread for this section, I will be using glue to secure my knots and end threads. This isn't something I usually do, but working with satin and metallics, those tend to loosen up over time. Adding a small dab of glue will help it stay secure. Okay, let's continue. The first frame is done in stem stitch using 2 strands. I'll mention that the entire window is done in 2 strands. Frame 2 and 3 are done in running whipping stitch. Both the running stitch and the whipping are done using 6 strands. I'm only doing one half of the window for the sake of time, but you can finish all the arches before moving on to the plant. This next section will be done in threaded backstitch. It's a very simple stitch, but it will get tricky navigating the surrounding stitches. To make it less complicated, it's important you take one branch at a time and start from the right to left. The base of the stitch is backstitch. Once done with that, to make the leaves, you will go in a zigzag direction, going below each backstitch. But to make it a little bit more fun, we will add a little knot to each U shape as shown here. The very tip of each branch has a little loop. Just go in and out of the same hole, leaving a loop behind. Navigating the stitches over the arches will be the most challenging part of this project. Once you're done with that, it's smooth sailing. Just one note before moving on. It's regarding this straight stitch here. Make sure you go below any of the stitches that make up the plant. We want it to look like the plant is over the straight stitch. Make sure the inside of the window, at least the vertical lines, are complete before moving on to the next plant. Let's move on to plant 2. The branch is stitched using stem stitch and the little leaves are straight stitches. Do check out the pattern for the thread count. So I took a little break and I came back and I've already completed the windowsill and stem stitch, and the sides of the vase are done in back stitch. The rest of the vase is done with straight stitches. We've made it to the last plant. The basket is made using a weaving stitch. Which straight stitches you lay down first, vertical, horizontal, is a personal preference. When you are done weaving, go around the basket with stem stitch. The final stitch are all the French knots. Each knot is made up of 2 turns around the needle. I'm using very light tension to create a loose knot, helping create more volume. Don't be afraid to overlap knots over existing stitches, especially towards the top and right side of the basket. And that's it for all the embroidery. The final step is to assemble the paper shape panel. Add foam tape to an empty section. Do add a few strips on the center so it doesn't sag over time. Now carefully align the embroidery to the center and press down gently. The last detail is to add a cord to display. I'm so thrilled with the final outcome of this project. It's a bit deceiving in the complexity, but I hope you saw how easy and quick of a project it really is. Thank you for joining me. One last reminder, all the links are in the video description. If you enjoyed this tutorial or simply want to support me, please subscribe to my channel. All the support is greatly appreciated. Have a wonderful day and I'll see you next time. Keep on stitching. Bye.